Hello there, my name is Diane Bowden and today I'm going to show you the basics of how to quill. We're going to run through the basic shapes. I'm going to talk to you about the things that you need to do quilling, and then I'm going to show you a basic design to give you an idea of how to start in this fascinating craft. My journey in quilling began 40 years ago when I first discovered it. And I've been on that journey ever since, picking up lots of tips and wrinkles along the way to improve my quilling. And I'm hoping to share some of those with you. I've been teaching probably for about the last 30 years and have enjoyed introducing lots of people to this fascinating craft. So I'd like to be able to share some of the things that I've learnt with you all now. Now, to do quilling, you don't need very many materials or much equipment. That's the simplicity of it. And a few things that will help you are quilling tools. Here's a tool here with a slightly bigger slot in the end in which to insert your paper, which is good for wider strips of paper for 10mm, say. And here's what we call a dowel quilling tool, which is a piece of dowel for the handle, and they're called needle tools because this particular type is a needle which has the eye cut off and inserted into a piece of dowel, and that will give you the slot in there in which to insert your paper, which really helps you to begin rolling your strip round to keep it secure. So that is your quilling tool. Another essential for quilling is a pair of very sharp scissors. Now you want to have a pair that's got a nice short blade because you won't be cutting into strips a lot, but just on the end and to cut them into sections. And a pair of scissors like this is very useful when you come to fringe a strip of paper because you want to cut very fine fringe that is close together. And a pair of scissors like this will really help you to do that. Another thing that is an essential really is just an ordinary ruler with millimetres and centimetres marked on it. And if metric really confuses you or you find it too difficult to count lots of millimetres, another useful thing that you can do is to make yourself a homemade measure where you just take a piece of cardboard and measure off the relevant lengths of strip that crop up an awful lot of the time. You'll find that in a lot of quilling patterns, they will mention a fraction of a strip where you fold the paper into half, a quarter, or an eighth strip. Some people just like to measure the strip off a measure like this, and a lot of people like to just fold the strip into the relevant fraction, which is my preferred method because it's just easier. Fold it in half, you get a half a strip, and again a quarter strip, and again an eighth a strip. Or you can just measure it along according to the strip that you want. Other measurements are not quite so easy to fold into sections, like 75mm, which is a sixth of a strip, which is difficult. So it would be a lot easier just to measure off 75mm, 90mm, which is a fifth of a strip, and so on. These can be quite useful thing to do. So there are a few other tools that you can use which will help you with your quilling, and some of these are tweezers. These are angle tweezers which are useful for picking up small pieces of quilling and arranging them onto a design. So there are those, and some other tweezers we have here are fine straight tweezers. Again, these are useful for picking up pieces of quilling, or maybe just a strip of quilling when you're trying to do a stem, something like that. Easier to pick up with a pair of tweezers rather than with your fingers, because sometimes tweezers can get in where your fingers can't. So again, some tweezers like that. And these ones are similar, but these are even finer, needle fine tweezers, again for getting into different bits and pieces of quilling where your fingers aren't able to go. So there's a selection of tweezers there. And another very useful item to have in your quilling box is some wooden cocktail sticks, just plain and simple. And again, these are very useful because you can use these for picking up pieces of quilling. You can take glue off. If there's too much glue on a strip, you can take that off with a cocktail stick. And again, it's just a useful item to have. You'll find that as you go along, you add different things to your workbox, which will help you to achieve your quilling. The next thing that you will need to have is some quilling glue. And there are lots of glues on the market, a different range of PVA, but you need to find one that's got what we call a good grab, which has a low water content. So you're not waiting a long time for the glue to dry, because you want to apply the glue and for it to dry quite quickly so that your piece holds together, and then you can move on to the next piece. So a good quality PVA glue that has a low water content, and that should really help you when gluing your pieces together. Now, in connection with that, another very useful item is what they call a fine tip glue applicator, which fixes onto the top of your glue bottle and allows you, if we have one here with it already attached, has a pin in the top, so that you can just do that once in a while to free up the glue so that it runs freely from the tip. And then this has what we call a fine writing line of glue. If I show you on the back of my hand, you can see the fine line that it gives you. And this is a really useful tool for quillers, because it gives you such a small amount of glue at any one time. You can still take it off if you've put too much glue on it, but generally this should serve your purpose well. So now I'm going to talk to you about the quilling strips that are available. They come in different widths and different sizes. So these ones are the 10mm strips, 10mm width strips. These ones in the middle here are 5mm width strips, and these ones here are probably the most common that you'll come across, which is the standard width 3mm wide strips. I'm also going to talk to you about the right and the wrong side of the paper. Where the paper's cut, what we refer to as the right side has a slight bevel on it. It's where the paper is kind of slightly rounded at the edges, which is the right side, the smooth side. You can see it, but you can probably feel it more easily. When you run your finger and thumb over the strip, it feels smoother and is more rounded. Now, if you turn the strip over onto the other side, it feels slightly rougher. If you feel the edges, they turn up very slightly, and that in quilling terms is always known as the wrong side of the paper. And what you aim to do is, when you're rolling the paper, which we'll show you in a few minutes, you want to have the wrong side towards you and the right side on the outside, the smooth side. So if you think of the right side being on the outside to give you a smooth finish, so that you're always rolling strips the same way round. Now, this does make a difference when you've got a design, if you've rolled all the strips of paper in the same way, because sometimes with darker colours particularly, you'll find that there's a difference between the sides of the paper. It can make it look lighter or darker, and if you've got them willy-nilly, higgledy-piggledy, you won't have such a consistent design. So it's a very good thing to get used to when you're learning to handle paper, and to recognise what the right and the wrong side of the paper is. When it comes to measuring and cutting your quilling strips, you need to just carefully remove a strip from the pack on the edge like that. Now, if we're going to say a pattern that you're using requires a quarter strip or an eighth of a strip, then you're going to just carefully fold your strip into half and cut it, and then in half again, and that will give you just your quarter strip. So it's a lot easier than just measuring, just to fold it into the fraction of a strip that you need. And again, if you want an eighth of a strip, you could just fold it then. If you wanted a 16th of a strip, then you could just fold that in half and cut again. So that's a quick way of measuring strips. Now, if a pattern that you're using requires a different kind of measurement, this is when you can use your measuring stick that you have made. Again, just take another strip off there, and say we want 150mm, 15 centimetres. So put your strip onto the nought and go along to 150, and then just cut that. And then you'd have a 300mm strip left. So you could just fold that in half, and that will give you 150mm. So then you'd have 3 strips the same. So there are several different ways that you can cut your strips, but most quilling patterns will refer either to a fraction of a strip, or it'll be in millimetres or centimetres. So now we come to the bit where you're going to roll the coil. And as we've mentioned before, you want to make sure that the right side, the smooth side of the paper, is on the outside, and then you've got the wrong side facing you. Now, the majority of quillers do roll towards themselves, and personally, I roll towards myself. I think you've got more control over the coil if it's coming towards you. But a few people do naturally roll away from themselves, and there isn't a right and a wrong way to do this. It's just whatever comes to you naturally. But most people who quill do tend to roll towards themselves. But again, it's personal choice, and you need to find what suits you best. So you've got your strip ready cut there, and your quilling tool, and you're just going to insert the end of the strip into the tool. And once you've got it in the tool, then it's just a question of rolling it along the strip. Just keep going. And what you're aiming for is a nice even tension. When you get to the end of the tool, end of the strip of paper, you just let go, and there's your coil. And you need to allow it to expand as much as it's going to. I think initially people get very frightened that it's going to completely unravel and it's all going to unwind and go everywhere, but it'll only expand to the limit that it's capable of. So you do need to just relax and let the coil do its thing, and there you have it. So just take it off the tool like that, and that is your coil. Do that again. I'll show you another one. So again, smooth side on the outside, insert your piece of paper, and away we go. There we are. And this can be a very relaxing process, because you'll be doing a lot of these, and then letting it go, and then you've got your coil. You just allow it to expand as much as it's going to. Now, the beauty of quilling is in the rolling, really. It's in the consistency of coils. It's not just the overall shape that you're trying to make. It's the beauty of the coil paper inside the coil that you're aiming for. So these are what they would call an open coil, because you've just rolled your strip, you've let it go, allowed it to expand, and it's just free. But it isn't very stable like that, which is why we will glue down the end, and then we can make it into any number of different shapes from that. But before you do that, you do need to glue down the end of your coil. So we pick up a coil in your fingers like that, and then just peel back the loose end, and then apply just a tiny amount of glue onto the end of your strip of paper. If you think there's too much, you can just wipe a little bit away with the cocktail stick, and then using the other end, just go in that last turn round of the paper and bring that round so that you've got something to push against. That's really helpful, and that will allow the end of the strip to be glued down. And that is the basis of most quilling, most straightforward quilling. And then we can start making the different shapes according to the design that you need it for. So having learnt to roll our coils and glue down the end, I'm now going to show you how you make some of the basic shapes in quilling, which will enable you to create some simple designs. Now, the first shape that I'm going to show you, having made a closed coil where we glued down the end of the strip of paper, is the teardrop shape. And having said that I always cut the strips into the lengths that I need to make my design, I always try to use the place where I joined it as the place where I make a pinch to make a point or a corner. There will always be somewhere in your piece of quilling where there is a point or a break in it, and it's a lot easier if you use that where the join is, and it will disguise it, and it'll also be a little bit easier to do as well. So I hold the shape between my thumb and finger, and you can see just there, that's where the join is. and I'm going to use that joint as the place where I make the pinch. So you need to pinch it quite firmly down the length of the strip, and there you should end up with a teardrop shape. And the magic of quilling is what's going on inside the coil, where you've got that kind of feathering effect. Now, there isn't anything clever that I've done on my part. It's just what happens when you pinch it, the layers of the paper inside will sort of feather back. And this is a shape that I refer to as the quiller's best friend, because teardrops crop up again and again in designs, sometimes on their own, but often you start off with a teardrop shape and then you'll turn it into another shape to make something else. But often you will start off with a teardrop. So it's a really good basic shape to get under your belt to start with. So that's that first shape. And now we're going to show you an application for teardrops. As I say, they're very useful shapes. In this flower pot design, you can see that the petals are made up out of teardrop shapes. And so that you can see a little more closely what's going on here, the petals of the flower are each made out of a teardrop shape. And it's good practice to roll and shape coils so that they come up of an even size so that you can make a flower. The next shape that I'm going to show you, again, just using a coil with the end glued down, and this one is going to be an eye shape. Now again, I'm going to use the join as the place where I make the pinch on one side, and this time you're going to hold the coil in your fingers and thumbs like that. This side, I think because I'm left-handed, I always tend to have the join on the left, but it really doesn't matter which side you have it. And then you're going to make a gentle pinch at both ends. Try and keep it nice and rounded in the middle. Just pinch it like that and you should end up with a shape that has a point at either end, and it looks like an eye, so it's easy to remember that you've made an eye shape. So that's another shape. I'm going to show you another card with sunflowers on it. The petals here are all made up out of eye shapes round a central coil. So they're really useful for making flower petals. And another one is a very good idea to practice so that they come up of an even size. The next shape I'll show you is a leaf shape. Again, this is named for obvious reasons. So take another coil. This one is very similar to an eye shape because you're going to make the same kind of movement. I'm going to use the join as the place where I'll make a pinch, but instead of just pinching it straight, as you pinch it, you're going to put a little twist in it. So you're going to go up on one side and down on the other at the same time. It's like patting your head and rubbing your tummy. You're going to go up on one side and down on the other, and that's going to give you a leaf shape. And again, that's as the name would suggest, that's a very useful shape because it crops up an awful lot in designs. And you can see here that these shapes around the strawberries and the flowers are made up of leaf. You can see the leaf shape being used there, and actually the tops of the green parts of the strawberry are leaf shapes as well. The next shape I'm going to show you is a crescent shape. Again, make sure that you use the join as the place where you pinch, and really this one just going to push with your thumbs into the shape like that, just to make a gentle curve, but also pinching at the ends to make a crescent shape, like a crescent moon, as the name would suggest. And again, that can be a useful shape when making designs. So that's your crescent shape. I'll show you a design using this shape. So we've got an eye shape in the middle of the strawberry and a crescent shape around the outside to create that kind of strawberry you can see here. And with the strawberries, to give the shape definition, when you're gluing several different quilling shapes together, what you can actually do is run another strip around the whole outline of the strawberry, and that pulls the shape together and it gives you better definition. And that's where you just put a few dots of glue around the edge of the quilling and then run another strip around the whole edge. I'm going to show you another quilling shape, again, the quiller's best friend is the peg. Now these ones are pretty much foolproof, but they're an easy shape to roll, that you don't have to shape this one because it's just going to be rolled up strip of paper and you're going to glue the paper down to itself and not allow it to expand this time. So you need to hold on to it quite tightly, and then a little bit of glue like that. Take a bit off, there we are, and seal down the end. And you just need to hold this, give it a little moment for the glue to really do its work. Hold it on the quilling tool. And then when you come to take it off the quilling tool, try not to pull it, because sometimes what can happen where you've inserted the paper into the tool, it can stay there, and as you pull it, it can stay fixed and you'll just end up with a sort of twirly whirly bit. So you don't really want that. So the best thing is to get hold of it by the shoulder there and just gently ease it out of the tool like that. Then put it down onto the table and find your trusty cocktail stick. Now, when you've rolled your peg, it looks absolutely fine, but there are a couple of things that you can do to improve the look of it. One of them is just to tap it down like that, and that will kind of even out all the layers where you've been rolling it, and it will give you a smoother finish. So just a little tapping movement will just help to settle it. And you might just be able to see that where you've inserted the strip into the quilling tool, you'll always get that little piece of paper that comes across the middle, which is where it's anchored on to begin with. And that does spoil the look of your peg shape. So a handy little tip is to use the point of your cocktail stick and put that in the centre of your peg like that. Then hold on to it, give it a little twisty movement like that, and that will make your piece of paper go over to one side and you'll end up with a lovely even centre in the middle of your peg. It's a small thing, but it does improve the overall look of your quilling. It will raise it to the next level, as they say. Mostly they're used for the centres of flowers, or you can make up a whole flower just with peg shapes on their own. But another thing they're useful for is holly berries. You can use them to make the berries at Christmas time, and also for eyes. For when you're doing birds and animals or people even, you can use a peg to make an eye shape. And there's even a peg on the Father Christmas bobble hat there. So you can see from the shapes that we've made, we started off with just an ordinary coil, and then you can turn that same coil into a number of different shapes just by pinching it, finishing up with the peg shape that's just rolled and glued down without allowing it to expand. Having made a few shapes, and we've had a bit of a practice at teardrops and eye shapes and a peg, we're now going to assemble those just to make a basic flower, to show you how to assemble your shapes that you've made and to glue them onto a background card. First of all, I'll show you how to make a slightly stronger stem. Because the paper is quite fragile, just on its end as a single strip. When you're making a stem for a flower or a branch or anything, it's quite a useful tip to use a double thickness of paper. So take a strip and then fold it in half, put some glue onto one side and then bring down the other half, and then just smooth it out on your fingers to make a double strip. And that you'll be surprised at how much extra surface area that gives you to put the glue on, and it'll give you a stronger stem for your flower. So first of all, we'll take one of the teardrops that we've made, and as I say, I like to use a cocktail stick just to pick up the shape, and I can put that in anywhere where I can get it in, where it's going to stay nicely snugly in there like that, and turn it over and then hold on to it and just put a few dots of glue. You don't need very much glue at all, just a little bit in the middle there and a bit at the point. And now I'm going to offer it up to the card. It's always a good idea when you're doing a flower like that to put your first petal in at 12 o'clock. If you get that one in and then you've got something as to use as a guide to put the other petals around it. Because if you start somewhere else and it's not in the middle, your eye will be drawn to the one at the top, and if that isn't in the right place, it can mess up the whole design. So visually, if you get your first one in at 12 o'clock, then you'll be away. So we're going to add other teardrops around it, and what you can do to begin with is just arrange them on the background without gluing them down. Once you've got your first one in, so we can get them like that. Okay, so we're going to put our stem in between those last two at the bottom there in a moment. Now, another thing to tell you about is try to make sure that you have all the teardrops facing the same way. If you look at the insides of the coils, you'll see that I've got them all going in the same direction. And that just will improve the look of the design, because if they're all sorts of different ways round, you won't get such a pleasing design. So before you stick them down, just do a check. And often I find one that is the wrong way round and I turn it round quick before I've glued it down, because you only have one shot at it. Once you've glued it down, it's very difficult to take it off and remedy the situation. So have a quick look round just to check they're all going the same way. Tickety-boo, then we can do them like that. So the next one I'll pick up and just put a little bit of glue on the top there, a little bit on the point, and then offer it up to your card. You've got a little bit of room for manoeuvre there, and then I'll probably go to the other side and glue this next one down like so. And you've got plenty of time, so don't rush, don't feel like the glue's going to dry off while you're holding it. You've got plenty of time just to put it into place. And I'm going to go back to this one. So you're trying to aim to get all the points meeting in the centre. A couple more to go. This is where you'll find that a fine tip applicator is a real boon, because it just dispenses the right amount of glue at any one time. There we are, and the last one going in now. Just move that one around a little bit. There we are. And there's the petals of your flower glued on. Right, the next thing we'll do is to take the double width stem. I think I'll probably just trim it down a little bit to make it a little bit shorter. Get rid of those bits there. And then just offer it up and just check that that's going to work in between. And those two petals will support the top of your stem. Right, so we'll just straighten that out a bit. And then a little bit of glue along the edge like that. You can use the cocktail stick here just to spread the glue out a bit. And if it runs over the edge, you can just take that off. The less glue you have on there, the better result you'll get. Just enough to hold it in place. And then you can put your stem in between there like that. So that's the stem. And then we've got a couple of leaves to go either side. And then leave the other side. Yeah, he doesn't want to go, does he? There we are, he's alive. There we are. Okay, and finally, your crowning glory is your beautiful peg that you've made, which is going to go on to be the centre of your flower. So a little bit of glue on there, and then the peg just to go on the top. And sometimes a peg can cover a multitude of sins. If they haven't quite met the points underneath, nobody's ever going to know. Okay, and that is your finished flower. Thank you for joining me as I show you some of the basic techniques in quilling. I really hope it may have given you some inspiration and encourage you to have a go at quilling for yourself. It is such an absorbing hobby, and a lot of people tell me that once they start quilling they become addicts and they just can't stop rolling, and I hope that might be the same for you.